Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about XSplit, which is a streaming or recording software very similar to OBS. I've been playing around with this software for a while now. I finally upgraded to the full version of it. So let's get in. Let me walk through the software and talk a little bit about it. So the first thing you can see here up on the screen is that I've opened up the software. I've simply opened it up and they give you a couple options. And the one thing I should mention, if you're going to buy it, the full entire lifetime version of the software is $200. That's totally what I would recommend buying. So there is a free version. Just use that for a little bit to make sure you like the software, and then just go ahead and buy the full version. Don't worry about because they offer a few different packages that are like monthly and stuff. I would totally not do that. I would definitely just buy the full version. Okay, so you get into the software and they give you a few different options, and all these options, or you can import from OBS. All these options is they're just going to create a few different scenes for you. So like if you were doing console gaming or PC gaming, they have a few different screens that you might like to use, like some preset screens so that you don't have to go in and create your own. I would prefer to just create my own, but you know what? I'm just going to open this up and use it by default for now. Okay, so we're on the main part of the screen. Up at the top of the screen, we've got our menu, and I'm going to go through that. In the center, we have what you're going to see while you stream or record. On the bottom, we have all of our sources, and we'll talk about making those and adding those. And then down here, we have our scenes. So by default, they gave me an in-game scene, a host scene, a start scene, and a be right back scene. And I can create more. But basically the in-game scene, you can see this would be where like my video is. And then this would be my game. And they give you some directions. And these are just, here's a host scene. Like if I was saying something, here would be like my gamer tag. If there was a start scene, I could have like starting soon. It's nice they give you these preset scenes that you don't have to go in and create them yourself. Kind of cool that they have that. I like that they're just preset and pre-made. So I like that. To create your own scene, you're simply going to click this plus button right here. So if I was going to create a game, like I play a lot of League of Legends, I've been playing a lot of Valorant recently. If I was going to record them or stream them, I would want to create a new scene for the game. So I'm going to click the plus button. You can see I just created something called +5. As soon as I select +5, notice how there's nothing down here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in, I'm going to click add source, and I am going to find my game or my software. Once I do that, I'll show you how to set up to actually record. But let's first find our game or find our software. Okay, so we're going to go to add source. Now, if you're familiar with OBS, I think that the way that XSplit adds sources is a little easier, and there are a couple advantages XSplit has that OBS does not, at least out of the box. All right, so first of all, we have screen capture. So let's just say that I don't really need to record like just a window. I just want to record my whole screen. Okay, so I can go to monitor capture, and I can actually record my desktop one. Now, since I have a second monitor, I'm actually able to record on both of them, which is kind of cool. So in OBS, you cannot record on your laptop monitor by default unless you go in and change some of the video card settings, whereas in XSplit, I can actually do that right away, which is awesome. Or I can go to window capture, and window capture will just open up one of my something that I have, like a default website or something like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to game capture, and I'm going to find my game. Right now I have Camtasia open because that's what I'm using to record this video, but if I had like League of Legends, I would simply just select my League of Legends and keep it there. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to click, we're going to do a screen capture of desktop 1 just so that I have something up there. All right, so I'm going to click desktop 1. Now what that's doing is it's recording my whole desktop, and since I'm recording my desktop and I'm viewing it, it's showing like the million different versions of it, which it wouldn't do if I was recording. So I just have this up there as an example because I want to show you some of the options and how it can work. Okay, so we have our source. Now, if I was going to add, I can do other things. I can add like my webcam. I can add video. I could add any of my webcams here. So if I wanted myself, I could add, you know, sound. I could have, oh, and this is kind of cool. You can add a web page. So I could find a web page and add that right to my stream, which is pretty neat. So you can play around with that. So they have some cool stuff here that you can play around with. I'm going to go to this general widgets in just a little bit. I'm going to show you how to do that. But basically, you can add any source. You can add any window, any web page, any game you're playing. Add it, and you're able to record it. Okay, so once we've done that, if we want to play with the settings of whatever we're doing, I can right click and find set. It'll go right, goes right to my settings, or I can just click the settings here. I haven't actually needed to play with and change any of their default settings on my actual source yet. So I've been able to just keep their default settings, but you can see there is some stuff that you can play around with if you needed to. I have yet to have to do that. Everything, their default has been fine. If I want to hide a source, like I have multiple, I can just simply click the little eye here and I can hide them. Okay, let's go up just a little bit. So right now I can see this is called Scene 5. I can change the name of it. Like I would call this League of Legends scene or whatever I wanted it to be, just so I knew what it was. Now you can see over here it's called League of Legends scene. Here's my Be Right Back, my host. So it's kind of cool. You can switch on and off your scene based on what you're doing. So technically, the way I stream, I could probably have one of these set up for all of my games and just have some different ones for every single game. But the way you organize your stuff may be completely different. All right. Then we have our sound. So here is our sound. And basically what I'm going to do, so here is like me talking. This is my mic. I think this is a little odd. You can actually see down here my mic, the way it's going. Like why this whole white thing isn't just going, I don't know. It's just like a little bar at the bottom. I think that's kind of weird. I don't like that. I'd rather it just be the whole thing, but whatever. That's what they chose to do. Here you can mute or unmute. And then this is our volume of our speakers, our game. And right here are your settings. It's very important that you click this and actually ensure that the speakers and microphone that they have set up by default are the correct ones that you're going to use. These other properties, these other settings, I haven't really had to go in and mess with at all. But the audio I have, and you can see it went right to audio when I clicked it. Here is my system sound. I can choose my speakers and my microphone. What is my microphone? And check that to make sure that it's correct. And you can play around with the other settings. And if you want to change like the volume of your game versus microphone, you can do that here as well right here. And then there are other settings here. As I've said, I've not had to change any of these. You can set hotkeys for various things. I've not had to change any of these settings by default from what they are, but you can go in and play around with what you would need to do if things are not working or you want to change something. Okay. Now, let's get to the menu. And now we're getting to the good part where we're going to talk about, well, how do you actually stream this? How do you set it up? Okay. So we go to File, and it's just our basic, like, you know, new presentation, load present. Let's actually hide this to make this a little cleaner. So we have our new presentation, load presentation, that kind of stuff. You can see you do have to log in and out. Something that's kind of cool, if you do create a recording or a screenshot, you can just click My Recordings or My Screenshots, and it takes you right to the file. And it also allows you to open up a folder where you can actually get right into the folder, so you don't have to like dig in and find it in your computer, which is very nice. All right. Broadcast. Now this is where we set up where we want to stream. You can see right now I just have YouTube and Twitch set up, but by default they give you a bunch of options like Facebook, Mixer, and then you can create a custom one where if you're using like Restream or anything like that, you can use that with this software. But if you were going to create a new one, basically what it does is it asks you for your login and password and logs you in. As it does that, it tests some things for you and creates your settings. Let me go into those settings just to show you what that looks like. So if I was going to stream this right now, I could just click like broadcast to my account, but I want to go into the settings. So when you're setting up your account, you know, it logs you in and then it goes to these settings here and asks you if you want to change anything. So there were some things here that I did need to change. You can see you can actually just, you know, authorize them to use your account, or you can use your stream key for those of you familiar with OBS and stream keys. But you don't need to do that. All right, for server, I would, by default, they select automatic. That's what they recommend, and that's what I also recommend you use as well. For your video codec, for those of you that do have like a separate video card, like I have this, it will select that by default. For those of you that don't, it'll select this 264, which is just going to be what you have by default on your machine. Whatever you want to choose, you can choose. Now, what I did have to change, for some odd reason, they kept setting my bit rate to 2000. And then when I was streaming, I would realize that it was very distorted, the stream, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I thought maybe it was XSplit. I thought maybe it was, I didn't know what the issue was, because when I stream using OBS, I do not have that problem. So what I did is I actually went into OBS and realized that by default, the bitrate in OBS is 6,000. As soon as I went into XSplit and changed my bitrate, lo and behold, problem solved. So it was a bitrate issue. So make sure that your bitrate is high enough that it's actually going to stream to the settings that you want it to be and the quality that you want it to be. And this will be based on your monitor and your internet speed. So you might have to play around with that and do some settings. Mode, by default, it's CBR, which is correct. You can change your sound bitrate. I just kept it at 128, which is the default, and that was all I had to do. I really was this bitrate that I needed to play around with. There were a few other things I needed to play around with. I'm going to click OK. I'm ready to stream almost. So let's talk about some of the other settings first before we get here. Okay, so I have a record option where I can record locally. And the record locally is going to obviously be, it's much easier to get a higher quality than if you're just broadcasting. But before I go ahead and click broadcast here, there's something else I want to play around with that I want to show you. And then I'm going to show you some of these extra things over here. All right, so before I broadcast, even though I had set my bitrate to this 6,000, I was still having some issues. This did solve my problem, but there was one other thing I needed to play around with just to make sure that it was correct. All right, so over here in the top right-hand corner is where you're going to select your resolution and frames. And both of these, for some odd reason, my default setting was 720p, and my frame rate was default set to 30 frames per second. Now, how fast or slow you have this set is going to be based on the type of computer you have. Can it handle 30 or 60 frames per second and 1080p based on your monitor? So you're going to have to play around with this. I can't just tell you what it should be for your exact machine. You're going to have to play around with streaming and do some tests. But for some reason on me, it was set on 720p and 30 frames per second. And again, this was also causing some distortion. The quality of graphics compared to OBS was not good. So I went to OBS and checked my settings. Sure enough, I was on 1080p and 60 frames per second on OBS. So I set the same settings on XSplit. Boom, perfect, exactly the same, all set up correctly. So I had to manually change it to 60 frames per second, and I had to manually change it to 1080p. Just by, right here I can choose what I want it to be. Do I want it to be 720? Do I want it to be 1080? But by default, XSplit was putting me on 720p, and I needed to be on 1080. So make sure make sure you check that. Once I had that fixed, once I had those three settings, which were my bitrate, my resolution, my frames per second, I simply click broadcast, and all that I do is just click. I'd click this Twitch, and it would stream to this Twitch page. Now, what's interesting is that I can actually stream to all three of these at the exact same time using XSplit. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Is it similar to Restream where I don't need Restream? I can just stream to all three of these at the same time. No. Because what happened is, even though I was streaming to all three of these at the same time, it was still breaking up, using like 3 times the internet. So I was having a lot of distortion issues as well. So you can only stream to one at a time unless you're using a service like Restream. I mean, unless you have the internet that can handle that. If you do have that, I pay for 200 megabits per second. So that's my speed. I was not able to do it on that internet service. Maybe if I had the 400 package or higher, I might be able to do it, which is kind of interesting. Okay. Then we just have these extra things. We have a little player here. One of the cool things they have, and basically all of it is right here, is these extensions and in their tools. So if you go to their tools and I click, let's go to the plugin store. They have a bunch of plugins that you can download. They call them sources, extensions, and outputs. I'll just click on all of them, actually, so that we can see all of them. But they do things like allow your chat to be on your stream, various types of little things that you can add. Add your YouTube chat, add Facebook Live, various things like that that you're allowed to add to your stream. And it's just thinking as I scroll down. But you can add any plugins that you would like to, and then you'd be able to use them right here. So that's what your plugins do. That's what they can do. One cool thing that I do like about XSplit is they do have a nice manual. If I click here, manual, it does open up the web, but they have a lot of videos and like a lot of walkthroughs on how to use their software, which is really cool. I really like that. Was happy about that. Otherwise, it's very simple to use. I mean, those are the basic features. That's pretty much everything. Very easy to use. Compared to OBS, I would say that starting out the first time you use it, I'd say they are exactly the same. Because you know, the first time you're using a streaming software, you have to kind of figure it out. You know, they're not self-intuitive as much as I would like them to be. But I'd say they're pretty much identical there. I'd say if you can use OBS, you could jump right into XSplit and have it figured out in 20 to 30 minutes. Very simple to do. I think XSplit does have some advantages, which I like, but obviously you're paying for it, so you would expect it to be a little better in certain ways. I don't really see any advantages of OBS over XSplit, other than it's free, 100% free. There is a free version of this as well. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, they're very similar pieces of software. This just goes above and beyond in some very simple ways that are effective, like being able to record the screen of my laptop, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, I mean, I really like it. I'm having fun. I like XSplit. It's a good piece of software. I'm glad I have it now as part of my arsenal when I'm going to stream and do other things. In some ways, it makes life a little easier. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and have a great day, y'all.